I have a I have a question, Stuart, Chris.
Yes.
Stuart, is there any value in past life memories?
Uh, you know, I mean, I don't know how to answer that. Yes, you know, we learn about stuff like that, and possibly it could help us work in the present. But, you know, I mean, I really am not an adherent to all of that, you know, past life regression and turning. I mean, the whole purpose is to, I talked about this yesterday, I think. The whole purpose is to learn to live in the moment.
Yes.
And if you spend your whole life digging around in the past, you know, the only thing that will happen is you might figure out a few things in your head, and it's not going to help you to live in the moment. Much better to invest the energy, and as I say, 1,000 is in developing the. Please try and not drink anything while the class is going on. I mean, it's really important that people sit still. It's, you know, it's much more valuable to build a chakra system that gives you the capacity to live completely in the moment. If you do that, you will develop, look, the past, the future, the present, all of it exists in the moment. And if you build the kind of system I'm talking about, it will enable you to go back into the past and see things. And hopefully maybe just let them go, surrender them, so that they stop affecting, you know, your inner life and affecting you from growing closer to God. So the point is to build a system in the now, in the present, because basically throughout my life, I finally learned that that's all we have. We don't have the past. Past is dead. And even if you see your past lives, you will see it from the perspective of the way you're living today. And it's going to be very different than it actually was. Mm-hmm. You'll see it through a glass darkly. You know, it's a quote from the Bible, you know, and it's a very good quote. You know, because we are different today than we were 3 lifetimes ago. Yeah. And we see the world from, you know, the state that we're in at this moment. And what happened to us, you know, 10 minutes ago, we are different this moment. And I think, to me, that's the key to all of this, is not to, you know, spend your time messing around trying to figure out what happened 5 lifetimes ago. And also, I've never met anybody who swept the halls of, you know, some palace, and everybody was the king, an emperor, you know, I mean, you know, some great saint, you know, I mean, nobody ever, you know, goes back into a past life and discovers that they were the porter at Versailles, you know? So what I'm saying is that a lot of this is pretension, and please try and sit still, people. You know, if you're moving, you know, you're all sitting in your own apartments there, your own places, but everybody is involved in this class. And if people are fidgeting and moving, it really disrupts the entire class. So try and sit still. If you have an itch, go a little deeper and surrender the itch. You know, if you want to have a drink of coffee or water, wait 5 minutes. The class will be over and you can do it. It's really important because any kind of inorganic movement, it really disrupts the class. And I need that kind of discipline in order to do this class successfully. So what I'm saying is that I get this all the time from people about past life regression and going into the past lives and working out the past. And one can do it, but it's not the answer. You know, if you can go back into the past and learn exactly what you have to do in the present, you know, to build yourself and get closer to your enlightenment, then it has value. But just to go back there and rummage around in some experiences you had in your past life, it's basically a waste of time. It's a waste of anyone's time. And I know people, earn a lot of money doing past life regressions and all this stuff. And frankly, I don't think it really has any kind of intrinsic value. Much more valuable is to learn how to build your life in the now. Much more valuable.
Yes.
And if you do that, you'll be able to see your past life.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you'll be able to detach yourself from your past life and not have to rummage around in it and try to figure out what happened 3 lifetimes ago that made you the way you are today. You can get free of the way you are today by building a chakra system inside that is strong enough to do it.
Thank you. That is just exactly what I wanted to hear and needed to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're
And
welcome.
I have another question, actually, Stuart. I have been your student for 41 years now, and it's just our relationship as teacher and student has evolved over time. And I just regard it as the most sacred relationship that I have. And I would like it if you would please talk about the relationship between student and teacher.
Okay. Yes, I can talk about it. Look, it's probably one of the highest marriages that exists on the earth, because the purpose of a relationship between a student and teacher is very, it's very one-pointed, and that really has to do with both of them wanting to get their spiritual enlightenment. A real student, you understand, has a need that is so deep that it really makes the teacher work in that kind of depth. A real teacher is in the same condition. Their need to be with God is so deep that it forces the student to work on themselves, to grow inside, and to also build a connection with higher energy. That relationship, the moment it's taken for granted, it just dies. And I don't care if you're with a teacher for 100 years. If you begin to take that relationship for granted, it'll come to an end. And the way you stop taking it for granted is you really tap the need in yourself to truly learn what this teacher has to teach. And a real teacher doesn't want disciples. I mean, frankly, the last thing in the world I want are disciples. I want people that really want to grow and that really want to build an inner life where they can get their own independent connection with God. That to me is the key to this whole thing. All the rest of it is just a crock of shit. And I mean it. It doesn't mean anything, because it just, you have disciples and, I mean, it just adds more karma to life,
Yeah.
But people getting free, not people living in lip service gratitude, which to me is also a bunch of bullshit. Knowing how to give, knowing how to receive, knowing how to use the moment in that relationship to build a connection to God, knowing how to truly use everything they learn, both teacher and student, to grow inside and develop a connection with higher energy in the universe. That is the incredible marriage of a teacher and a student. And in that marriage, there's no longer teacher and student. There's two souls evolving and growing closer to God, to spiritual enlightenment, to, really the real reason they're born on the earth.
Yeah.
And I think it's essential. And gratitude, from a student to a teacher to a student. I mean, gratitude has to be more than lip service gratitude. It has to come with the willingness for somebody to go so far past themselves to offer up thanks in their actions and what they do with their life, how they live their life, and never, ever taking that relationship for granted. I cannot take any of you for granted. Everyone that is in this meditation has a place in my heart, and everyone that comes to this meditation will get the deepest thing I can find in myself in order to nurture them and help them to grow in their life. It's the only reason I do this. You understand? Helping to build people to get strong enough, that they in turn possibly can do it for somebody else. But if you really want to do it for somebody else and you want to be a teacher of this, You can't expect to live in a cubicle. You can't expect to live in some comfortable world, that really is based upon mediocrity and, boring and, day-to-day humdrum. It has to be the dynamics of one's connection with higher energy in the universe. And to me, this is essential. It's what I had with Rudy, and he beat it into my brain. He never stopped, reminding me why I was there. I remember once I used to come home to his house where I lived, and I didn't have a place to sleep. And I'll never forget, I wrote about this in a book. It's incredible, where I complained to him, and he looked at me and he pointed to a weed growing in the crack in the New York City sidewalk. And he said, that weed has more guts than you. And I looked at that weed and I said, holy shit, if a weed can live under those circumstances, why am I complaining about a place to sleep? I wasn't there for that. I was there to get my training, to get my spiritual training. And he made sure of that because he invited 20 people to be there. And one day he said to me, Stuart, you can relax. I'm sending everybody home. And I said to him, Rudy, you can invite 20 more people. Every one of these people have taught me how to get closer to God. And I have nothing but gratitude for their presence in your house. And he looked at me and he said, Stuart, that's exactly why I invited them to be there. I needed you to get this way. So what I'm saying is that relationship is so dynamic. And if you're in a relationship like that with a teacher, you've got to find what in that relationship is making you to grow. You're not there to judge the teacher's not there to judge the student. You're there to truly transmit gratitude, love, Shakti, energy, all of the ingredients that make it possible for people to have a spiritual life. I even said, I said to Isabel today, she's here with me in Mexico, and I said, look, Isabel, I said, we're out looking for real estate agents and everybody's closed. I said, Isabel, why don't my students do this for me? Why do I have to run around looking for real estate? You found this extraordinary place here in San Miguel, so why can't a group of my students get together and find a place for me to live somewhere? And I just go there. It's just an amazing way for people to say, thank you, I'm grateful, and not take my presence in their life for granted. All of this works. You understand? All of this works because, look, I'm not complaining and I have to do this. But doing these classes 7 times a week, is an enormous amount of work. I don't know if any of you realize the amount of work doing these classes 7 times a week. So all of this is a way of saying, thank you. Thank you. What can I do, to help you in your life? And that is on both the part of the teacher and the student. And when student and teacher interact that way, nobody ever takes each other for granted. Nobody gets familiar. People find ways of doing in their life that say, thank you, thank you. And you don't spend endless hours sending me excuses of why you can't make it to meditation class. Frankly, I really don't give a damn. I work with the people that are here. I will make an endless effort to nurture anybody who comes here and is willing to do the work to get to God. They have me 1,000,000,000%, frankly. And I'm not, at this point in my life, I don't want to listen to people's, I had a birthday party, who cares, if you truly want to have a spiritual life and these classes mean something to you, it's like Moses waving the wand and the Red Sea parts, suddenly, everything works so that you can attend this, get the Shakti, have the interaction with the teacher and grow in your life. So please, this relationship is the key to any kind of spiritual evolution. I mean, I used to talk about this years ago. You know, when I was younger, I read the Old Testament, and there's like pages and pages and pages of so-and-so begot so-and-so who begot so-and-so. And I said, what the hell are they writing about? You know, begot, and then I began to realize it was generation begetting generation of spiritual teachings that were passing down. This is the same thing. This is exactly the same thing. And you don't get it by ever taking it for granted. You don't get it by having something in your brain thinking, I am better than that. You get it through humility, through gratitude, through growth, through, you know, willing to do through your activities to help make a situation possible. And, you know, that's how you get it. That's how I got it. I slaved in Denton, Texas for 9 years. You know, I used to go to the edge of that town and I would see dragons coming up. You know, I thought I was at the end of the world, you know, but I spent 9 years building that situation until there was nothing else for me to do there. And it was like my boot camp that prepared me for going back to New York and doing the rest of my life. So that relationship between a student and a teacher is such a valuable relationship. I don't take any of you for granted, and I hope that you all don't take this for granted. And you find a way to make this more viable. You find a way to help really contribute something to allow this thing to grow and develop. Otherwise, you know, this thing can go on for 1,000 years and nobody's going to go anywhere. So the question is a very valid one about the relationship between a student and a teacher. I mean, I had that kind of relationship with Rudy. I really did. And it was unbelievable. And I'm telling you, there was 1 year that it was the hardest year of my life. No, I wouldn't say the hardest, but it was up there with being one of the most difficult things I ever went through. It was all in the training. And it wasn't my job to judge him. It was my job to find out what he was teaching me and how to make it work for my life. And that was the most extraordinary thing I ever learned from him. How to take, you know, he said, he told me, he said, I've broken with Muktananda, but I want to experiment with some of his techniques and I'm going to use you as the guinea pig. Oh. And I went through a year of that, of being trained in, I mean, some of the unbelievable secrets of the cosmos of how to deal with negativity in the world. And my job was not to judge Rudy. My job was, how will this work for me? How can I grow? How can I evolve? How can I get closer to God? You know, and I remember Nityananda was there. He was a great guide light for me. He always came out of my heart and gave me the right answer, always. You know, and I remember one day he gave me an answer and I went to Rudy a half hour later. I gave him a big hug and I said, thanks. And his only response is, I didn't think you would get it this quickly. That was his response. And I said, Rudy, you know, I have a master who's training me, you know. I have to have learned something in all these years, you know. So we both chuckled and gave each other a big hug and it was extraordinary. So I don't judge you, and some of you do some bullshit things, and I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to see how I can make everything work for me to grow and get closer to God. And if you approach a teacher in your head and you're judging the teacher, you're never going to go anywhere. I promise you. I mean, Rudy always said he wasn't running for Miss America, you know? he said, I'm not running for Miss America, you know? You want to find things wrong with me? There are things wrong with me. If you want to sit there and judge me, you'll have no problems finding things, you know? And I'm the same way. You'll find things, but that's not the point of all. It's the point of is to find how to make it work for you so that you can grow in your life. And not that you're sitting on your ass and you expect to become enlightened. You know, it doesn't work that way. Now, this is rough. And I didn't have any plans on being rough tonight. This is tough teachings, but God only knows people have to learn these things because people almost assume that this is coming to them and they don't really have to do anything, but except maybe show up in a class every so often. But it's not that way. You have to find ways of making it all possible. I mean, God bless Bob Sink. I mean, he, in Denton, Texas, he used to, I used to look at him and I used to bring a tear to my eye to see how he used to work in that kitchen, and what he did there was amazing, And I never forget that. Whew. Does anyone else have a question they would like to
Thank
ask?
you so much. Thank you.
I hope this is clear. I'm not trying to frighten anybody. I'm trying to let you see what this teacher-student relationship is truly about. Not pranaming and kissing somebody's foot and, all that stuff which I've been through, but really, what it's really about. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart.
Yes.
Rudy talked about when we have an opening or when a student has an opening and they're in a vulnerable place. And then, as he puts it, then you get a punch to the kidney. And he says it's almost like a spiritual rule that this happens. And he said it was to teach you not, as you're saying, not to take for granted the opening and not to feel like you've arrived, but to go deeper. Could you talk about that? Like why that's a spiritual law?
Talk about a punch to the stomach?
He said to the kidney, this was his words.
I don't know who you're talking about. And I'm never going to punch anybody in their kidneys,
No, not you. It was, and not that anyone would do it, but he said life. So say you get a phone call that someone.
Look, life will do it every day that you're alive. Life has a tendency of reminding us that we're all a bunch of schmucks, It's endlessly reminding us that we have to do inner work and we can't stop doing it. And as soon as you don't stop doing it, the whole process stops. It just stops. I mean, if you say, okay, I'll do it again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm going on vacation, I'm gone for a month, 2 months, the whole process just stops. So we need a good punch in the kidneys, God bless, a metaphorical one anyway, to remind us what we're doing here on the earth. We need to be reminded, and life will remind us. It'll always present us with some really difficult situation that we have to overcome. And if we don't do inner work, we don't really overcome it. So there's a constant punch in the kidneys, metaphorically speaking. It's how many people I meet and I've met in my life who told me about the great Kundalini experience they had 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And I look at them in the present and they're half dead inside. And they're living their life based on some experience they had 20 years ago. And I get emails like this all the time. I meet people in the street, they tell me stuff like this. And I said, well, what have you been doing the last 20 years? Well, nothing. I just remember that experience and it was so powerful. And, that's a punch in the gut. That's absolutely a punch in the gut. But people, then go to doctors and try to figure out what physically is wrong with them instead of doing deep inner work so they can continue to develop an experience they had once in their life.
That's why it's a spiritual law.
I don't know if it's a spiritual law. It's just, it happens. It's just the way life works. I'm not sure that's written in stone somewhere in the cosmos. It's just the way life works. And then we spend all our time complaining about that punch in the gut, what it did to us, and how, instead of saying, well, what do I have to do to grow? What do I have to do to go above this, to transcend this, to get bigger than this, to get closer to my enlightenment? So I'm not sure that it's a law. I don't, I never heard that, but it is something that happens because people need to be reminded. And then that's why training is so important, because in training and learning about this, you develop the capacity to recognize these punches in the gut and then use them to grow in your life, and how to use them to grow. I mean, it's like when Rudy told me, when you graduate from college, these great things are going to happen for you. And I went to him with, I graduated, what's going to happen? He said, go get a master's degree. It was really, for me, at that time in my life, a punch in the gut. But instead of bitching and complaining about it, I went back to the meditation room and I sat down and did an unbelievable meditation, and Nityananda came and he gave me the answer. But that was a punch in the gut. I had a whole year of those punches in the gut, and I had to learn how to use them to grow. And that training has served me for my entire life,
I appreciate that, Stuart, because then it shows that you shouldn't stop, but that actually.
Well, most people would say, screw this. What do I need this for? Instead, I went and I found a real answer that really made me grow. It took me to another level in my spiritual work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
I have a question, Stuart.
Yes.
Does it mean something about my inner life that I never feel like I'm doing enough?
There's so much echo, I can't hear you. Can't make out. Why don't you ask me later? Okay, you're here. There's too much echo. Okay. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, once again, God bless you all. And thank you for these amazing questions that are bringing up such profound teachings that, even I'm listening to them in a very deep and real way. So God bless you for that, and for being here and being involved in these sessions. And I hope you take this away with you. And maybe, it's not intellectual understanding. There's a whole deeper level of understanding that makes all of this stuff work. So bless you all and thank you. And in all humility, I am very grateful that we can do this together. And I hope to see everybody. There will be a class on Sunday, and I hope to see everybody in the class. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Blessings.
Thank you, Stuart.
Good night.
I'm gonna figure out how to. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Night.